Christina Chkarboujl. I'm a sophomore majoring in global studies and earth sciences at USC.
I'm TJ Martynowicz, and I am majoring in international relations with a minor in consumer behavior.
Well, I'm here as part of Dr. Gibson's research assistant team. TJ and I have been working on developing some research in regard to C-Roads, which is a climate education tool that Dr. Gibson has used before in her classes. And so TJ and I are just working on basically developing that and seeing how we can flesh it out, include things like net zero, offsetting, and yeah, what we're doing here on the island is we're watching COP27 to try to get some ideas for how we can implement things that happen at a real COP in C-Roads, which is a simulation of an international climate conference.
Yeah, so essentially we're just trying to make the simulation more representative of the actual climate conferences. So for example, we're considering things like implementing press conferences, implementing different types of talks. One thing that I found within international relations education in general is how complex some of the topics are. So specifically in terms of climate change, it was really difficult to grasp the complexity of the regime and understanding how decisions are made. So we were fortunate enough to take IR 323 with Professor Gibson, in which we were able to use the C-Roads simulation in order to better understand the international climate regime. And personally, I found it extremely helpful in understanding the voice that the global south has, the voice that the global north has, and how these dynamics play with each other, and how power relations are really, really important in the international climate regime.
Yeah, I think that the game and the simulation really helped to contextualize and help us understand how all these dynamics work, and also to ourselves, start thinking about how we would portray the global north and the global south, how we would take into consideration their interests, their pitfalls, all of the different complexities of negotiations, and how to formulate speeches, what kind of demands, what kind of promises countries make, how difficult those things are to keep, which all plays out as we're looking now. We're watching COP27, how it's all playing out in the real world. So I think that basis really gave us a good foundation for understanding all these dynamics at play here.
One thing that I thought was really interesting is the other day we actually saw a gamification talk or panel during the COP, and this introduced us to En-ROADS, which is a different version of the C-Roads simulation. And we both found this format absolutely fascinating. It offered a bunch of different opportunities that C-Roads doesn't necessarily include. So we were now considering how to implement this in the future in Professor Gibson's classes. And so one way that we were thinking is to potentially use the simulation, incorporate multiple rounds of negotiation, and also try to incorporate press conferences to add a level of reality to the talk.
We're also interested in how we can implement the participation of civil society in C-Roads and possibly in En-ROADS. Again, En-ROADS is something that is very new to us because we've been focusing our research primarily on expanding C-Roads. So the talk that we watched last night really opened our eyes to the possibilities of implementing En-ROADS, maybe in Dr. Gibson's higher level classes, like 400 level classes. So yeah, we still have a lot of work to do, but it's been very exciting learning about all of these different tools. We had experts at that panel yesterday that came from US colleges and who have had a lot of experience with En-ROADS, and they were just showing everybody, the world, around the world, how to implement these climate tools, and I think that that's very important. Very good work that they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're doing a great job of improving climate literacy amongst the general population, and particularly within businesses. They've talked a lot about how they've implemented these simulations within corporations, and how that reshapes how they understand it. I remember I was on the En-ROADS simulation last night, and someone from Pepsi was talking about how important it was in reshaping how they're approaching certain policies. So I think the En-ROADS is a really great opportunity to make a big impact within the general population, as well as the population, as well as delegates and different members in the decision-making community.
TJ and I are in the Teaching International Relations program through the Center of Active Learning in International Studies at USC, and that's the program through which we've gone to high school classes, local high schools around South LA, and we've spoken to students, we've taught classes. Right now I'm teaching a climate change policy segment in an international relations class.
So we both had the opportunity to use the C-Roads simulation in a high school classroom with seniors, and I feel like getting the opportunity to see the other hand as the facilitator of the simulation was really, really important, and it allowed me to see the importance of opening remarks, the importance of negotiations, and how to facilitate these negotiations between parties. I noticed definitely a different understanding level amongst my students after completing the simulation. I felt that they had a much more understanding about how hard it is to reach their goals, even though everyone in the class recognized the importance of climate change and the importance of working together. They were still struggling to reach basic consensus on things, and I feel like they all had a better understanding of why it's so difficult to reach that 1.5 degree goal.
Yeah, and I think that seeing how their actions affect the global temperature increase in real time really helps them understand sort of the gravity of the actions that nations take at these conferences. Our location in Los Angeles, where USC's flagship is, it's a really critical place for climate change because it's already facing, all of California is already facing a lot of effects of climate change, and these students are going to grow up and be the future of policies in California and the US in general. And so I think that tools like this and us going into those classrooms and implementing those tools and fostering some kind of knowledge is really, really impactful given our space in LA.
And they had a basic understanding of things that affected them, but they didn't understand why it was happening. They didn't understand how decisions can improve their future. And so for me, that was a really great part about C-Roads, and it helped them just understand their reality.